In your hands, my dissatisfied fellow countrymen, and not in mine, is the momentous issue of civil war. You can have no conflict without being yourselves the aggressors.
After the attack on Sumter, the only consistent attitude of a loyal man was with a rifle at his shoulder, and the only logical argument, a bullet.
Just weeks after President Lincoln's first inaugural address, in which he tried to reassure the North and reach out to the southern states who had seceded following his election, Fort Sumter, a federal fort in the seceded state of South Carolina, was shelled by the Confederacy and surrendered on April 13, 1861. Minnesota Governor Alexander Ramsey, who happened to be in the nation's capital at this pivotal moment, promptly called on Secretary of War Simon Cameron. Minnesota would have the distinction of being the first state to volunteer troops to the Union Army.
He went right away to see Secretary Cameron. I'm here on behalf of the state of Minnesota, and I'm offering troops, tendering 1,000 troops. That's when Cameron told him, well, I'm on my way to see President Lincoln, write it down.
As the executive of the state of Minnesota, I hereby tender to the government of the United States, on the part of that state, 1,000 men, to be ready for service so soon as the necessary information can be communicated to the people there.
So I think he understood that he had to be in that right place at the right time, capitalizing on the fact he did happen to be out there. I think he really understood what the next few weeks were going to be, and we needed to know what states could be counted on and what troops could already be counted on going to that federal cause.
While events were unfolding quickly in the nation's capital, Minnesotans were called together in communities across the young state.
The men from Faribault met at the Metropolitan Hotel, all signed up, and then headed to Fort Snelling, and most seemed to be going by wagons. In Stillwater, they met at the Armory. They were hauled in lumber wagons to Fort Snelling. The people in Winona met at the Sanborn Hall, where they had their militia practices. They actually went by boat upriver, because there were no railroads in Minnesota at the start of the Civil War. But they all met at Fort Snelling.
They may not have come from the very well-known states like Pennsylvania and New York, but this was going to be their way of showing their patriotism to the Union.
Because initially they were called up for just 90 days. The men here who received the word thought, well, this will be somewhat of an adventure. We'll be home in time for the fall harvest. We'll go show these Southerners what's going on. In about 2 weeks, the government figured out that they were going to need more than 90 days. They asked the men to re-enlist for a period of 3 years, or the duration of the war.
Ramsey knew that Minnesota was ill-equipped to fight.
I ask whether you would feel justified in saying that the reasonable expenses that may be involved will be furnished by the general government.
As men gathered at Fort Snelling, there were no arms or accoutrements. In lieu of uniforms, the men were issued red shirts and black pants.
They marched out the doors of Fort Snelling and down to the wharf underneath the bluff of the fort, where they boarded the War Eagle and the Northern Belle. They went down to La Crosse and Prairie du Chien. There they boarded trains and headed east.
Residents of Chicago took note of the impressive 1st Regiment of Minnesota Volunteer Infantry. The Chicago Tribune reported,
"There are few regiments that can compare in brawn and muscle with these Minnesotians. They are unquestionably the finest body of troops that has yet appeared in our streets."
Early on, the lore of the men from the 1st Minnesota begins with this comment from the Chicago Tribune. The war evolved from being an adventure to being serious business very quickly at the Battle of Bull Run. That was the battle where they realized this is not going to be a lark. This is going to take a while. I just saw a lot of my friends die. The generals noticed that this well-drilled, uniformed group from Minnesota did not run. They held their ground until ordered to retreat. That began the reputation of the 1st Minnesota with the generals knowing that this was a unit that they could count on. Battle after battle, the North was not the victor. Antietam was a very wearing battle on everybody. Then Gettysburg comes along in 1863, and the tide turns. The Union is saved at that battle, and from then on the Union starts winning. And that's where the 1st Minnesota made their most famous charge, of course. The men really cohesed as a unit. They always stayed together, they never lost faith, and they always took care of each other.
150 years later, Minnesotans, courtesy of the National Archives and Records Administration, had the chance to read Ramsey's letter for themselves.
I think the letter really did help put Minnesota on the map. It showed that we were a state willing to make sacrifices, and any battle that any of the Minnesota regiments took part in, they definitely showed their valor.
Very respectfully, your obedient servant, Alexander Ramsey.